Greetings, occultists, and welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to talk about rituals and making them your own. And the ritual I've chosen for this is the lesser ritual of the Pentagram. This might make this somewhat of a controversial issue to some, since we tend to almost deify Crowley. We can take like Wiccan rituals and all these rituals we find in these books and then be like, oh, mix and match the ones we find online, but something done by someone, or one that's got some time under its belt and is revered. We kind of almost like a classic song, don't fuck with that. But anybody that has followed my videos knows that I'm heathen. I'm very Nordic based, but I'm also very high magic in my ritual practice, and therefore rituals such as the lesser ritual of the Pentagram is a pinnacle. It's one of the foundation points of ceremonial magic. It's used to establish the ritual space and erect this circle of power. But it's also very Judeo-Christian. Uses the Abrahamic names of power, invoking the God names to establish the ritual circle. So, of course, that don't really flow well with my Nordic energies. So, of course, I've converted it into Nordic energies, and it is a little more tricky to do that with such a sophisticated ritual as opposed to like your typical Wiccan ritual where you're just cleansing, consecrating, cast the circle, and call the quarters, invoke your deity of choice. This is more of the God names are invoked when doing specific pentagrams and specific motions or actions, and essentially it's a spell to erect the circle. It's a incantation. So that's takes a bit of some research to convert it quite a bit more than your typical neo-pagan rituals done. But it's not nearly as much as I had to undertake to do the ritual of the hexagram, which I'll do a video about that, of course. But first I want to kind of go through the original so you can kind of understand what goes into it, why it's performed the way it is, and that way if you prefer the original, I'm kind of teaching you how to do that as well. We teach everyone to put your own personal power and your own energy into rituals, yet there are certain rituals that for some reason we say don't touch. And this is kind of one of those rituals, and I call bullshit because this isn't like some Judeo-Christian Bible thing where we think that the gods descended down and presented this ritual to Crowley and was like, this is how you do it. This was a man that came up with his ritual for his path and his practice, and he shared it with the world. Same way that we do today on YouTube, but of course he did it through books. And so my first avenue into this, because I used to have that same kind of mindset, it's like, this is Crowley, you don't fuck with this shit, until I read a book called The Witch's Kabbalah by Ellen Cannon Reed. And essentially what she did was she took Kabbalistic philosophy and practice, and she Wiccanized it, because she too was very ceremonial. She loved the high magic and the Kabbalistic side of it, but again, she couldn't connect with the Judeo-Christian energies within it. So she made it her own, and she used, she did her research, and she equated and replaced the Judeo-Christian energies on the Tree of Life with pagan energies, which, you know, of course, Crowley did in 777. He teaches you how to do this but and that kind of, well, she could do that, well then why couldn't I? You know, why can't I? Don't have to not perform a ritual or a certain practice because I can't connect with those energies. I can make it my own if I put in the time and the work and do the research. And so that's what I did, and I've even developed my own Kabbalistic path working, where I equated the Norse energies with the tree of Yggdrasil, which is the Norse tree. And of course on it, though, there are 9 worlds and 24 runes, because the original has 10 sephira, which would be equated to worlds, and 22 paths corresponding to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Of course, the Norse has the runic alphabet. There are 24. So that would mean I would have to use one less world and add 2 paths to connect them. So it wasn't an easy endeavor to undertake, but it turned out quite well. In fact, it is actually what pushed me to convert the pentagram and hexagram rituals, because as you can see, the paths up in the top, where it connects the physical and the spiritual, the paths make up a pentagram. So therefore, only natural to do a pentagram ritual to invoke these energies when doing the path workings, connecting on that part of the tree. And as you can see, there's a hexagram on the lower half, connecting the physical to the astral. And therefore, hexagram ritual to invoke these powers. Now, granted, the original versions of the rituals were for the pentagram ritual. The lesser ritual of the pentagram was to establish the working space and erect the circle, and the hexagram ritual was to cleanse your working area on the astral. But the pentagram is a symbol of our connection with the divine, and the hexagram is within sacred geometry, it is representative of creative force on the astral, creation with working on the astral. Therefore, and it's also known as the astral doorway. Therefore, it works well. And of course, whenever you're doing the rituals for the path working, and there are paths where these two connect. And so I do both rituals when that's concerned. When I'm doing just my regular rituals, I do both for this simple fact that of what they are designed to do. I'll get into more detail about that later. Right now, I want to start the process of dissecting the lesser ritual of the pentagram, so you kind of understand what's happening within this ritual. And the ritual starts out with the Kabbalistic cross. Now, again, you have to refer to the tree of life when understanding the Kabbalistic cross. As you can see on the diagram here, it's equating the purpose of the Kabbalistic cross is establishing the magician as the center of the universe and the center point of the ritual. And to do so, he's establishing himself with the divine. He's connecting himself with the divine, making himself one with the divine, therefore he has the power. And the top of the tree of life is known as Kether. This is the infathomable divine. This is the true nature of God that is beyond our comprehension. The whole reason that we've created these stock-form deities, like I've discussed in previous videos, is that we were created by a divine being, a divine pure spirit, and left orphaned in a physical world. Therefore, in our natural physical mundane minds, we can't begin to fathom what the divine is, and that's what Kether is. That is the infathomable divine, the true pure divine. And that's why the beginning of it is Atah, which is essentially, it is the last line of the Lord's Prayer in the Christian Bible. The Our Father who art in heaven. Alright. Atah is thou art. The last line of the prayer is thou art, for thou art the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. And uses thou art as a connection with the divine, Kether. Thou art the kingdom, which is Malkuth. Okay? You know, it's much like the Catholic, only it's here. As you can see on the diagram, it goes down into the earth. You're drawing this divine light down through you into the earth, and then you're bringing it back up. Vegabura, Vegadula, Leolam, Amen. And you're connecting to these energies corresponding on the tree of life. And the reason for that is, yet again, you are establishing yourself as the center of the universe. But the Kabbalistic tree of life is a map of creation. It is the map of the universe and the universal powers. And by bringing it down into yourself and making yourself that map. Essentially, you are saying, I am creation, and therefore I am the creator of creation. I am all that is. And so you are not only the central part of the universe, but you're the central part of the ritual space. You are the ritual. And then next, there's a couple of things I want to talk about before I get into the erecting the actual circle. And that is, there are two motions, and these motions are the sign of the Emperor and the sign of silence. The sign of the Emperor is done when you're invoking the God names. You do your pentagram of your specific. In the original, it's invoking the earth, because you're on the physical plane. This ritual is dealing with the physical plane and the ritual space on the physical plane. So it's done in, you always do the invoking pentagram of earth. And then you do the sign of the Emperor. This is an active you're invoking these energies, and this is like there are the active and passive forms of the hawk god Horus, which is, he's the warrior god. He avenged his father's death when Osiris was killed by Set. And that's the sign of the Emperor. He's coming after him. And so you're invoking this. And that's real simple. It's, you bring your hands here and then thrust forward as you step forward. And you vibrate the God names as you step forward. And then the sign of silence is simply stepping back. After you invoke the God name, you step back, and it's your left finger to your lips like you're saying shh. Sign of silence. And this is a sign of, this is establishing that God name, that divine energy has been evoked, and now you show reverence. So pretty simple, but still very important. Now, and I'll get to later on what I've converted these into. For, of course, these are Egyptian, which was pre-Judeo-Christian energies, and what Judeo-Christian energies evolved into, and that's why they're intertwined there by Crowley. So first, and they always start in the East because it is both Judeo and Egyptian, Judeo-Christian and Egyptian energies, and these are both sun worship religions, or religions that derive from sun worship. And so they always start in the East where the sun rises. And so they start in the East. You do your invoking pentagram of earth, and you do the sign of the Emperor. First name is Yad-He-Vav-He. This is I am all. Was considered the most holy name of the Hebrew gods. It's what they when they translated the scriptures, they translated it into Lord, because they couldn't even say it out loud, because it would be invoking that name of power, invoking that energy. So they weren't allowed to say it unless they were using it. And that essentially was the "thou shalt not use the name of the Lord thy God in vain" in the Ten Commandments. It was, you couldn't say it without there being a meaning behind it, because it was a name of power. It was invoking something. And so, but in this instance, you're doing it for a purpose. And so you're allowed to speak it in your Yad He Vav He. And this is what they have bastardized into Jehovah or Yahweh, because there were no vowels. That's them trying to Americanize it or Englishify it. And you can't alter names of power like that and it have the same effect. So the next, turn to the second. You do your pentagram. And the next is Adonai. And this is Lord or Lords. The correct translation is Lords, plural, or gods. And again, I will explain why I use the name that I use, because of the translation of that. And the next is EIE. And this is God the Creator. The Father. I am that I am. I am. Whenever Moses asked, "Who shall I say sent you?" And he said, EIE. And essentially this is saying, I am all. I am the Father of creation. I always was, I am, and I always will be. And again, that being the translation, I'll explain why I used the name that I used, the deity that I used in this place. And then finally is Agla. AGLA. It is a Hebrew acronym, and it translated, it means, "You, O Lord, are mighty forever." And essentially this is the end of it. It's not much different than amen kind of thing. This is a praising and worshiping statement. You are mighty forever. It's the end of the prayer, if you will. And this is sealing. This is the last thing before you turn back to the east, sealing the circle. Although you don't use elemental associations when erecting the circle, you envision each pentagram in that elemental color correspondence. And then whenever they glow white, the purity of the divine, or the purity of spirit, if you will. And of course, after each, like, say we're doing the first one, Yad He Vav He, step back, and then you use it, pow, and then you move. Okay, you can use your athame, you can use your finger, you can use your whatever you want to do. And then after this is done, now you step back into the Tau cross. This is just standing with your arms straight out. And you invoke the archangels. And these are not protectors of your ritual. You've invoked names of power of God. You don't need angelic beings to enforce this. That's enforcement enough. What they are there for is they're intelligent beings to embody the elemental energies and lend this energy to the magician. And it's really simple. It's just Raphael before me, behind me, Gabriel, to my right hand, Mikael, to my left hand, Uriel. And as you're doing this, of course, you envision them coming forth. You are to feel their elements, feel like you have Raphael is to the east, and therefore he is air, so you feel a breeze, Gabriel rather, is, Michael is south, therefore he is fire, you feel warmth, things like that. And then afterwards, after you invoke the archangels, and then you once again do the Kabbalistic cross, Atah, Malkuth, Vegabora, Vegadula, Leolam, Amen. And this is one, yet again, establishing yourself as the center point. And two, you are establishing the ritual is complete, that the ritual circle is erected, and the ritual will now proceed. Same way in Wicca, you would stamp your staff, or you would stamp your foot, or you would ring your bell, or whatever. It's just an acknowledgement that the ritual circle is sealed, the orders have been called, and now your ritual can proceed. Now I want to discuss my variation and how I've converted it, and why I converted it the way I did, and why I put the energies and the names and so forth that I've converted it into to make it my own. And it starts out with Ne Divini Humanitive Supra, divine above, sub terra, earth below, ex eternum, from eternal, mortis e, from mortal, unitum spiritus sancti, unity within, divine, mortal, united. You are now one with the divine. You are the center of the universe. You are the center of the circle. Next comes what I have converted into the sign of Thor instead of the sign of the Emperor. Same concept. Horus was the warrior god, equated to Thor, right? The only difference in the action is when you go forward, you then trace. Here, let me back up. You then trace Thor's hammer. See? Simple. And the first name of power. Oh, also the pentagrams. I use the elemental correspondences, so I do the invoking in each. I do the invoking pentagram of each elemental quarter, as opposed to just invoking it, because I understand the purpose of the original, because it's on the physical plane. But to me, I like elemental energies, so I use the invoking pentagrams of each elemental quarter, because to me you're invoked, especially since at the end when you connect them they glow. It glows white with the divine, white with spirit. Spirit is the fifth element, the combination of all four elements, right? So you need to invoke all four of the elements. And also, being as that I'm a necromancer, and my dealings are with the spiritual and with the underworld and so forth, I start in the West. Now the progression of the name stays the same, because it's not done like, you know, a directional reference. These are in a certain order because it's an incantation. Therefore, it don't matter what direction you start at, you're still going to start with the same name. You're not going to mix up the wording of the spell because you started in a different quarter, in a different direction. So the first one, remember the original was Yad-He-Vav-He. That is Father God, right? Our Father. Okay, so the equivalent would be Odin, the All-Father. And since the original Yad-He-Vav-He is spelled out as a name of power, so do I with Odin in runic correspondences. So Odin is Othila, Dagus, Isa, Nathis. And that's spelling out Odin in runes, which is our magical alphabet, right? And that would be Othila, Dagus, Isa, Naltis. And then you retreat into the sign of Vader. The only difference is you will use your since Vader is Odin's son. He is the silent god of vengeance. Okay, same concept. He's silent, yet he's a god of vengeance. Therefore, I add where you would take your athame and hold it to your hip, like a sword silently being unsheathed. So, you see the actions aren't that different, but they, enough so that they do correspond more to the Norse energies. And then you turn to the north, to the invoking pentagram of the north. And the second, remember the original was Adonai, right? Which was lords or gods. Therefore, I chose Asya, the Asya. The Asya are the race of gods that dwell in Asgard. They are the Norse gods, the gods that we pay homage to. Of course, there are two different races of gods, but generally the gods of our people are the Asya. And so I chose the Asya. And then you turn to the south, where the original was Ai, which was the god of creation, right? So I chose Buri. Buri was the first god created out of Ginnegap, which was the yawning void or yawning abyss. This equating to the god of creation was all that was before when the earth was formless and void, right? Same concept. Therefore, he is the god of creation because he is the first god out of creation, right? So I chose Buri. Now, lastly, remember that Agla, A-G-L-A, right, was mighty, O God, mighty are you, O God, forever, right? So I chose an Icelandic acronym, Kagi, K-H-G-E, Kagi, which translates into mighty are you, O heathen gods, forever. Just using Icelandic instead of Hebrew and saying gods instead of God, heathen gods, establishing that it's my gods, the Norse gods. And then, of course, connecting the pentagrams, glows with white light of the divine. Now, whenever you finish, you, of course, go back into the same Tau cross, right? There's nothing Judeo-Christian about the Tau cross. And instead of evoking the archangels, I see the archangels in Judeo-Christianity. They stand at the four corners, right, of the universe, the north, south, east, and west. Now, when in Norse mythology, whenever Odin created Asgard or Earth out of Ymir's body, he appointed 4 dwarves to stand at the 4 corners and hold up the sky. So I chose these 4 dwarves because they stand at the 4 corners, north, south, east, and west. In the west, we have Vestri, and he is the dwarf of the element of water, and he stands in the west. And then we have Austri, which is in the east, because remember, you're doing it instead of going around the circle like you do in like a Wiccan. In high magic, you're saying before me, behind me. So of course you go west, east, south, north, right? So you say Vestri, before me, Vestri, mighty dwarf of the west, master of the element of water. Or you can just say before me, Vestri, like you do in the original. Behind me, Austri. To my right, Notri. To my left, Sutri. And then the ritual is completed with the orientation. Before me stands the pentagram, or before me flames the pentagram, and behind me shines the six-rayed star. Of course, done, the Kabbalistic cross is done prior to that, and then this orientation is stated. And this orientation is stating, before me flames the pentagram, flaming with divine fire. You know, this is establishing that the spiritual is before you. In me and my path workings, this has an even more of a connotation because I've done my path working on the astral, so therefore the hexagram is behind the six-pointed star, right? Now, before me flames the pentagram, the spiritual. These are the paths that lie ahead of me. This is also stating spiritual, astral, physical. We're connected to both, but we are separate in our own right. Once again, center point of the universe. You are in the center in between the two. And then once that is finished, you continue with whatever ritual you are going to perform. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope it's kind of gave you a little insight on how you can make these age-old rituals your own, and so you can connect with them, you can use them without having to use energies that don't flow with the energies you use in your ritual practice, into energies that if you don't feel comfortable with, because that is a stumbling block with a lot of modern pagans. Is there's a lot of, I can't do it because Abrahamic energies. So I hope this has helped. I hope I'd love to hear what you have to say, your feedback about this. Please drop them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, of course, so you can see when my next video comes out. And for your benefit, I'm also going to add, after this, I'm going both the scripts for the original lesser ritual of the pentagram, as well as the script for my own, so that it'd be a lot more easier for you to flow forth. You just pull it up, read it as it scrolls past as you perform it. And so until next time, may your ancestors guard, keep, and bless you. I'm Gangrel.